Broke Shabbat Yom, brothers and sisters, Hebrews in Jamaica, the Caribbeans, the West, to the four corners of the earth, scattered greetings. This Shabbat lesson, we're going to title it 400 Years of Silence. 400 years of silence, brothers and sisters. So what that period means. The period between the end of the Old Testament and the beginning of the New Testament, often referred to as the 400 silent years, is not a period of actual divine silence, but rather a time when Eliyahu did not reveal new prophetic messages through prophets as he had previously done. This period from the end of Malachi to the arrival of John the Baptist saw significant historical and political shifts, preparing the world for the coming of Yahushua Mashiach. While no new prophetic books were written during this time, Eliyahu was still active in fulfilling his overreaching plan, brothers and sisters. So was it quiet, brothers and sisters? Was the 400 years of silence really silent? Was the 400 years of silence really quiet, brothers and sisters? So although the 400 years between the Old and the New Testament are usually termed silent, they were neither quiet nor dull. In fact, they were quite the opposite. Though Eliyahu's prophetic voice to his people was silent, he orchestrated many significant events to prepare the Judean nation for the coming of their Mashiach. The last prophet of the Judean scriptures was Malachi, who wrote around 450 BC. His book ends ominously by predicting the coming of the day of the Adonai, preceded by the appearance of Eliyahu's prophet Elijah. The Israelites heard no message from Eliyahu after Malachi. Even during the successful Judean revolt led by the Maccabees against the Greeks around 150 BC, they still waited for a trustworthy prophet to arise. So we're going to examine that in 1 Maccabees 14 and 41. Okay, brothers and sisters, I said I was going to start from verse 41, right? Maccabees 14 and 41, but I'm going to start with the first chapter all the way to 41 so you can get that body context. Because this will show that the Most High was still working, even though he did not send forth any prophet unto Israel over 400 years. But he was still working, brothers and sisters. So we're going to show you that in First Maccabees. It's on the screen. First Maccabees 14, 1 to 41. This is talking about the capture of Demetrius. So in the year 172, King Demetrius gathered together his military forces. He marched into Media to find help in order to wage war against Trypho. When Arsaces, the king of Persia and Media, heard that Demetrius had invaded his territory, he sent one of his generals to capture him alive. The general went and defeated the army of Demetrius. He arrested Demetrius and took him to Arsaces, who put him under guard. Eulogy of Simon. The land of Yehudah enjoyed peace all the days of Simon. He sought what was good for his nation. His rule was agreeable to them, as was the honor shown him all his days. His crowning achievement was to take Joppa for a harbor, opening the way to the sea with its islands. He also extended his country's borders. He gained full control of the land. He took a great number of captives. He ruled over Gazara, Beth Zor, and the elevated fortresses. He removed impurities from the elevated fortresses. There was none to oppose him. People worked their farmland in peace. The ground was fertile and the trees of the plains were fruitful. All men sat along the sides of the streets and talked about good things. The young put on impressive military uniform. Simeon supplied the towns with food and with the means for defense. His fame spread to the ends of the earth. He established peace throughout the land. And Israel had great joy. All the people sat under their own vines and fig trees. No one made them afraid. No one was left in the land to fight them, because foreign kings had been crushed in those days. He gave help to all the humble ones among his people. He sought lawful ways. He did away with evil people and those who sin against the law. He made the sanctuary glorious and added it to its holy equipment. The people in Rome and those who were as far away as Sparta learned that Jonathan had died, and they were all very sad. They also heard that Simeon, his brother, had become high priest in his place, and that he was ruling over the country and its town. So they wrote to him on bronze tablets to renew with him the friendly alliance that they had established between his brother Judas and Jonathan. The tablets were read before the assembly in Jerusalem. This is a copy of the letter that Spartans sent the rulers of Sparta with the city to the high priest Simeon, the elders, the priests, and the rest of the Judean people. Our brothers and sisters, greetings. The envoys who were sent to our people have told us about your glory and honor, and we rejoiced when they came. We made this record in our public decrees concerning what they said. Numenius, Antiochus, son, and Antipater, Jason's son. The envoys who were sent to our people have told us about your glory and honor, and we rejoiced when they came. We made this record in our public decrees concerning what they said. Numentius, Antiochus' son, and Antipater, Jason's son, Judean representative, have come to renew their friendship with us. Our people were pleased to receive them with respect and to maintain a copy of their words in the public archives, so that Spartans may have a record of them. They have also sent a copy of this to Simeon, the high priest. Following this exchange, Simeon sent Numentius to Rome with a large gold shield weighing 1,000 minas to confirm the alliance with the Romans. When the people heard these things, they said, "How should we thank Simeon and his sons? He and his brothers and his father's family have stood firm. They have fought and repelled Israel's enemies and established our freedom." So they made a written record on bronze plaques and put it on pillars of Mount Zion. This is a copy of the document. On the 18th day of Elul, in the year 172, the third year of the great high priest Simeon, in the great assembly of the priests, the people and the rulers, elders of the country, the following was proclaimed to us. Wars occurred often in our country. Simeon Matthias, son and priest of son of Yorb, and his brothers bravely faced danger and fought against the enemy of their nation. They preserved the sanctuary of the law, and they brought great honor to their nation. Jonathan rallied the nation and became their high priest, and was gathered to his people. The enemies decided to invade their country and take hold of their sanctuary. Then Simeon rose up and fought for his nation. He spent great amounts of his own money to arm soldiers of his nation and gave them pay. He fortified the towns of Judea and Bethzor on the borders of Judea, where enemies' weapons had been stored in the past, and placed a ground of Judean soldiers there. He also fortified Joppa by the sea along the Gazara on the border of Azotus, where enemies formerly lived. The settled Judeans were and provided whatever was needed to restore the towns. The people saw Simeon's faithfulness and the honor that he had resolved to win for his nation. So they made him their leader and high priest, because he had done all these things and had acted towards his nation with justice and loyalty. He sought in every way to lift up his people. In his days, things prospered under his leadership, so that the Gentiles were driven out of the country, as well as those in David's city in Jerusalem, who had built themselves an elevated fortress. Gentiles used to leave the elevated fortress and defile the sanctuary area, doing great damage to its purity. He settled Judean troops in the elevated fortress and fortified it for the safety of the country and of the city, and built the walls of Jerusalem higher. In light of all these things, King Demetrius confirmed him as high priest. He also made him one of the leading political advisors and paid him other high honors. For he had heard that the Judeans were considered friends, allies, and brothers by the Romans, and that the Romans had welcomed the ambassadors of Simeon with honor. The Judeans and their priests have resolved that Simeon should be their leader and high priest forever until a trustworthy prophet should arise. He should govern them and take charge of the sanctuary, appointing official to oversee its task and the weapons and the fortresses of the country. Everyone should obey him. All contracts in the land should bear his name. In addition, he should be clothed in royal purple and wear gold. So you see, brothers and sisters, although the Mosai was silent for 400 years, he was still active because they still won wars. You know, Israel still won wars. You know what I mean? They still won wars, brothers and sisters. Although there was no prophet to send to warn them about the judgment and to change their ways, they still had a high priest, Simeon, and his sons and brothers. And they all were warriors too, brothers. They weren't just only priests. They had two offices. They were priests and also warriors. They fought for their country in Israel. And you see, this is why I say I can't wait for the Most High to destroy Edom and his system. So we can go back to this system here. This system the Most High set up for us. You know what I mean? The system of how to worship him in the land, to keep his feast days the way he ordained us to keep it in the land of Israel, where his name is Jerusalem. You see what I mean, brothers? Look how look at the beautiful system we had. Our leaders care for the people. They make sure the people are uplifted. They got food, they got clothes, they got shelter, they got things to do to bring forth money, so they could build and live in peace, brothers and sisters. This is what actual peace look like. You know what I mean? Under the commandments and the law. And brothers and sisters, this is what peace look like, brothers and sisters. Under the law, this is what peace, and I pray that we will go back to that, brothers and sisters, once the Most High take out the rebellious from among us. Because you see what he said right here too. Even the rebellious the Most High took out of the land. You see what it says right here in 35. Verse 35. The people saw Simeon's faithfulness and honor that he had resolved to win for his nation. So they made him their leader and high priest, because he had done all these things and had acted towards his nation with justice and loyalty. He sought in every way to lift up his people. In his days, things prospered under his leadership, so that the Gentiles were driven out of the country, as well as those in David's city in Jerusalem, who had built themselves an elevated fortress. Gentiles used to leave the elevated fortress and defile the sanctuary area, doing great damage to its purity. He settled Judean troops in the elevated fortress and fortified it for the safety of the country and of the city, brothers and sisters, and build the walls of Jerusalem higher. He looked out for his people, brothers and sisters, and drive out all the Gentiles and rebellious from among ethnic Israel. so we can live in peace. And the same thing going to happen right now. The Most High going to root out all the rebellious among us, including Gentiles who are against his people and sheep of his pastors, so we can enter into the land with peace and joy, bringing in the sheaves. Right, brothers and sisters, so we know in First Maccabees 14, although the Most High wasn't sending any prophet among the people, the Most High was still working. You understand? He still have Simeon and his brothers, you know what I mean, and the host of army of Israel went up and fight, and they didn't lose in the fight. The Most High was still with them. He just was silent. There was no written word. You understand? There was no written word for that period of time. Alright, so let's continue to examine that. Eliyahu would not speak to them again until John the Baptist. He was the one whom Yahusha called the embodiment of Elijah. The prophesied one of the one to come, right? So Eliyahu would not speak to them again until John the Baptist. He was the one whom Yahusha called the embodiment of Elijah, the prophesied one to come. John ended the silent years by announcing the arrival of Eliyahu's promised Mashiach. At the end of the Old Testament history, the book of Ezra and Nehemiah recorded. The book of Ezra and Nehemiah recorded. Yehudim peoples returned from their 70-year exile in Babylon. They began to reconstruct Eliyahu's temple in Jerusalem. Ezra 3 and 6. You can go read that for yourself. Ezra 3 and 6. Such a significant event that this era is also called the Second Temple period. During these 400 years, three significant events prepared the Yehudim people for the coming of Yahusha. The synagogue was created, the Septuagint was translated, Hanukkah was celebrated. In fact, without an understanding of these events, it is impossible to appreciate many parts of the New Testament. Synagogue, the Persian period, 586 to 333 BC. Eliyahu used the Babylonian Empire to discipline his people, Israel, in 586 BC. The Babylonians destroyed Solomon's temple, murdered many inhabitants of Judea, and exiled the rest of Babylon, where they live in seclusion and slavery, losing their land and temple. They beset the Yehudim people and forced them to adopt their community life and worship of Eliyahu to a new reality. During this cruel era of captivity, the first synagogue appeared. They became places where exiled Israelites gathered both to worship their Eliyahu and fellowship as a cohesive people in a foreign land. Synagogues building eventually sprung up wherever Yehudim people were exiled in the Mediterranean world. Although those who returned to Jerusalem rebuilt the temple in 515 BC, others continued to worship at synagogues throughout the world, inside and outside Israel. Synagogues also function as community centers where Yehudim people studied the Torah, collected donations for charity, and kept the official community records. Although the Old Testament contains no information about synagogues because they developed after the canon was closed, the New Testament mentioned them repeatedly in relation to Yahusha and his disciples. Okay, brothers and sisters, the Septuagint, the Ptolemaic Greek period from 333 to 200 BC. For the Yehudim people who returned to the land of their ancestors, Hebrew continued as the holy language spoken by the religious leaders and written in the scriptures. However, only about 10% returned after the Babylonian captivity. Most remained in the lands of the dispersion. 200 years later, a Yehudim community in Mizraim had grown large enough to attract the attention of Mizraim's king Ptolemy the second, one of four successors to Alexander the Great's vast empire. Since Greek had become the unifying language throughout that empire, Ptolemy wanted a copy of the Judean Torah in Greek, his own language, for his library. The ancient letter of Artaxerxes records how the translation was produced. King Ptolemy II asked the Judeans in Judea to send 72 translators to Mizraim, 6 from each of their 12 tribes. It claims that these men translated the 5 books of Moshe in 72 days. The rounded number of 70 became the name for this translation, Septuagint in Latin, also written as LXXX. So LXX is a Roman numeral, means 70. Over the next 150 years, all the Hebrew scriptures were translated into Greek and included in the Septuagint. The Septuagint was extremely important to the Greek-speaking Judean community in the Roman Empire. It kept Eliyahu's word accessible to new generation outside Israel who were unfamiliar with the ancient Hebrew language. It was used by the inspired authors of the New Testament. Most of their quotation of the Old Testament were taken from the Septuagint, not the Hebrew scriptures. So you see, brothers and sisters, we were in Greece also, so-called black people who are of ethnic Israel, who are descendants of Hebrews and Hebrew slaves. We were all over, brothers and sisters. That's why Paul could have went to Greece, brothers and sisters, because we were there. Because not everyone that after we were released from Babylon after the 70-year period, like this research saying, 10% of us went back to Jerusalem and built up Jerusalem and the temple, and many of our people stayed in the dispersed land and in Greece and built there also. Everywhere we went, we built temple, praising the King. So it also became the Bible of the early body, because most who embraced also became the Bible of the early body because most who embraced the belief in the Mashiach spoke Greek. 70 was the perfect complement to the Greek New Testament, providing early believers with a Bible written entirely in Greek. Hanukkah, the Seleucid Greek period, 200 to 164 BC. Though the Greeks who ruled the Judean in the 3rd century BC tolerated Eliyahu's people and supported the translation of their scriptures, the Greeks of the 2nd century BC were exactly the opposite. In a struggle to control the trade routes that passed through Israel, the Seleucid family ruling from Syria defeated the Ptolemies, who had ruled over the Judeans. With new rulers came new laws. These new Greek leaders wanted their captives to live like other Greeks, so they restricted Judean religious practice. For example, the Seleucids outlawed circumcision of male infants, forced Judeans to violate kosher food laws, and seized the temple treasures. They persecuted and murdered thousands of Judean people. The breaking point came in 167 BC when King Antiochus Epiphanes committed the ultimate blasphemy. He profaned the temple by placing an adulterous altar over the altar of burnt offering. This act, known as the abomination of desolation, rendered the temple unfit for worship. As the prophet Daniel had predicted, Daniel 11:31, go read for yourself. Judean history says Antiochus sacrificed a female pig. You believe that, brothers and sisters? A female pig on the altar, the worst of unclean animals and the highest insult to Eliyahu. I tell you, these Gentiles, they're wicked. Edom, filthy, brothers and sisters, and the day coming, I'm telling you. The wicked, the days are coming, the days are numbered, and those who follow after them. One zealous family began to revolt. Matthias, an Eliyahu-fearing priest, led his sons in refusing to comply with the Greek laws that compromised their faith. Their courage sparked fierce fighting against the Seleucids by armed bands of Judean freedom fighters led by Matthias' son Judah the Maccabee, who eventually liberated Jerusalem from Greek rule and dedicated a purified temple. Since that day, in December 164 BC, Judean people have celebrated that holy struggle with the holiday of Hanukkah. The holy day of Hanukkah, dedication for 8 days, also called the Festival of Lights. Hanukkah is still celebrated by Judean people around the world in November or December. These godly, courageous men and women who resisted the pagan Greek rulers are mentioned in the New Testament. Women received their dead raised to life again. Others were tortured, not accepting the deliverance that they might obtain a better resurrection. Hebrew 11:35. Read more about this period. See the apocryphal book of Second Maccabees 6 and 7. So take these down. Hebrews 11:35. Second Maccabees 6 and 7. Go and research and study for yourself. Study scripture for yourself, brothers and sisters. Yahushua himself celebrated the holy day. Now it was the feast of dedication in Jerusalem, and it was winter, and Yahushua walked in the temple in Solomon's porch. Here Yahushua, the light of the world, was asked by the Judean leader, "If you are the Mashiach, tell us plainly," to which he responded, "I am the son of Eliyahu." Yahushua came to the temple rededicated by the Maccabees and presented himself as the fulfillment of Eliyahu's messianic promises. Go back on my Mount Zion series again, brothers and sisters. I keep mentioning it because this is the period and this is where the land is. The fortified fortress of Mount Zion, where Jerusalem is, where the land of Benjamin and Ephraim are, still is, barren today. When will we go back and build it up, brothers and sisters? You cannot go, you cannot take your money with you. Ye princes of Yehuda and Benjamin and Levi. During the 400 years before the Mashiach, Eliyahu providentially provided his people with synagogues for their worship, scriptures in their common language, and a holy day to remember their calling. These provisions not only fulfilled their immediate needs, but also set the stage for the arrival of the Mashiach. The 400 not so quiet years became a clarion call affirming Eliyahu's sovereign plan and pointed to the good news of the Mashiach of Israel. Okay, brothers, here's some reference sources you can go and research and read up for yourself. Right, you got Lee Levine, The Ancient Synagogue, the First 1,000 Years, Second, New Haven, Connecticut, Yale University Press, 2005, page 21 to 44. For another helpful insight, survey, see Moses Silva and Karen A. Jobs. Invitation to the Septuagint, Grand Rapids, Baker 2005, M.I. Baker 2005. The full account is given in 1 Maccabees 1 to 4 and 2 Maccabees 6 to 7. We just went over 1 Maccabees, so you can go and read and research 2 Maccabees 6 and 10. Maccabee's name, Maccabee means hammer, referring to the courageous character of Judah and his fighters. The miracle of the oil lasting for 8 days is a much later Jewish in tradition of the Talmud, and is not found in either 1 or 2 Maccabees or Josephus. So I hope you get an understanding of the 400 years silent. Was it silent? No. God the Most High was still active. It's just that he didn't send any prophet to the children of Israel in that time period. Because the Most High was still working behind the scenes, still have his eyes on our people in Israel. He did not lead them without a leadership, you understand, neither without a victory. So on that note, Baruch Yahuwah, what is about hot? Baruch Yahushua Mashiach, Shina, Vishna, bless, love, and Shalom.